All right, you guys, welcome back into another One Piece video, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm just gonna hit you guys with the cold water right now, but we're gonna spend a hot minute on Moria. I'm sorry, y'all, you know, when it comes to Moria, if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know that I love this guy. I love that goober. So whenever he gets mentioned in a chapter, I lose it. Even when we didn't see him at Hachinosu, I lost it. So yes, this week, when we got the reveal that his name isn't just GECKO MORIA, but in fact, KOZUKI MORIA, I was off my rocker. I was excited. I was jumping for joy, and it quite genuinely was one of those plot reveals where I just couldn't stop smiling hours and hours later. And the more I think about KOZUKI MORIA, the happier I get. I can't remember the last reveal that really had me this way. It was probably back in Agate Island when we saw Rob Lucci making a comeback with CP0, but here we have it. This right here is my new euphoria. So yes, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why this is so cool and what it could mean for the future of Moria's story. Dude. Okay, so first up, we got volume 40 of Yamato's cover page journey. And I will say this, but the payoff was worth it. We had 40 weeks, over 40 weeks if you include color spreads, of absolute boredom. Don't get me wrong, I love cover page journeys. A lot of them are slow burns, and it is extra content at the end of the day. So I'm not complaining, right? Even though Yamato's journey was boring, I didn't mind it. I just wanted something at the end of the road. I wanted some sort of payoff, and here we have it. The hero, the Pirate of Justice is what they call him. The Pirate of Justice that was born in the West Blue and then later raised in Ringo was indeed KOZUKI MORIA. So first up, I've seen a lot of people saying that this makes absolutely no sense. How the hell could this grave belong to Moria when Moria is still alive? Moria is still out there somewhere. Well, there's a pretty easy explanation. The body was never recovered. That was one of the first things we heard about KOZUKI MORIA. And if you guys recall, GECKO MORIA is a slippery bastard. Dude, when Luffy tried to attack him multiple times in Thriller Bark, GECKO MORIA would simply switch places with his shadow. He even did that when Robin had him in a clutch situation. And not to mention, he has Absalom, a guy with the invisible devil fruit. Absalom saved GECKO MORIA from Doflamingo and the Pacifistas back at Marineford. He just straight up disappeared. So yeah, Wano thinking that GECKO MORIA is dead while he's actually alive makes sense. And then as far as GECKO MORIA being notorious around the world, right? He is a Shishibukai. How does Wano not know about this? How have they not put the pieces together? Well, that is because Wano is a closed-off country. They do not get outside news. So yeah, GECKO MORIA being a notorious pirate, while Wano still thinks that he's dead, does make sense. And also, a quick side tangent, but I want to give a major shout out to those of you who always believed in GECKO MORIA. Because look at this, 13 days ago, I put out a poll asking who does the Wano grave belong to, and 6% of 11,000 votes believed in GECKO MORIA. The GECKO MORIA hype train was so big, in fact, that I felt the need to put GECKO MORIA in his own category. So shoutouts to the 6%ers out there because you guys took the W home today. So as far as Moria having the KOZUKI last name, how is that possible? What is going on here? Was he adopted into the family, or is he a pure blood KOZUKI member? Honestly, I'm kind of mixed on this one. I can see a scenario where GECKO MORIA as a child somehow made it all the way to Wano, and then the KOZUKI clan, namely Sukiyaki, adopted him, and he became KOZUKI MORIA. But that feels odd. That feels really roundabout. Instead, I do veer more towards the thought that he is just a pure blood KOZUKI. You might be wondering, Sai, how's that possible? He was born in the West Blue. The KOZUKI live in Wano. That is true. That is very true. But hear me out. A couple of volumes ago, in the SBSs, Oda revealed that multiple members, multiple Wano families left Wano 55 years ago. One of those families was the Shimotsuki clan, which is quite notable because while some of the Shimotsuki left Wano, some of them stayed, which would be Zoro's great uncle, Shimotsuki Ushimaru, the blue-haired samurai who was in the cave with Yamato. And then we had other Shimotsuki who founded Shimotsuki Village, the village that Zoro grew up in. So I think there being multiple KOZUKI families, one that stayed in Wano, and then one that went all the way to the West Blue, that does fit. And not to mention, the timeline also fits as well, because Moria is 50 years old. They left 55 years ago. So Moria being born shortly after these families left fits really well, in my opinion. So yeah, I do think there is a high chance that he is a pure blood KOZUKI, and maybe he just wanted to travel back to his homeland, which is what he did at an early age, and because he was KOZUKI, the Wano citizens accepted him, and that is why this hero was raised in Ringo, which is a key reason why I don't think he's a sham or a phony, because I have heard some people saying that he maybe made up the name, but here's the thing, he was raised here. According to our information right now, he was raised in this country. I feel like if he was fake, more people would have sniffed it out. And then plus, would a fake KOZUKI member actually come back to Wano early within Kaido's reign and try to defend his village? I don't think so, right? I think Moria, yes, he's a bad guy now, but maybe back in the past, he was very different. I mean, hell, he was very different, right? Back when we saw the Kaido and Moria clash, Moria had no zombies behind him. Moria was actually fit, and he was a swordsman. Moria changed the day Kaido killed all of his Nakama. So yes, I do think there is a really good chance that Moria really was a pirate of justice back in his early days, and then after suffering a great loss at the hands of Kaido, his entire world flipped upside down. As far as why he would have changed his last name, it could just be because he felt immense shame after losing to Kaido, right? How could he call himself a KOZUKI if he couldn't defend his village and he couldn't defend his country? So right now, I'm kind of curious, but how would the citizens of Wano feel if they find out that Moria is still alive today? Would they be happy that another member of the KOZUKI clan is still out and about? Or would they say, oh, Moria, you abandoned us. You stole Shusui, didn't you? Right? Because I feel like that might get kind of dicey, but knowing the Wano citizens, they might just be happy that he's still alive. You know, kind of like Sukiyaki, right? Sukiyaki disappeared for all these years and then he reappeared and they're like, hey, at least he's alive. So maybe that's the same way with Moria. And then as far as him stealing Shisui, they might forgive him because it's already back in their possession. But yeah, I think that's one of those things you just don't mention at all, right? Moria comes back, he sees Shisui, he's like, whoa, that's cool. How'd that get there? Another thing I'm curious about too, right? Yamato is the one visiting Moria's shrine. Does Yamato know about Moria via Oden's logbook? Because I do think it would be really cool if she did know about Moria beforehand. Like, oh, this is the guy that talked to Oden, right? This is Oden's brother, cousin person thing. Yeah, I remember this guy. Like, I think that would be nice. And I highly doubt we'll ever get it, but I would love to see what a interaction between Oden and Moria would have been like. Because you gotta imagine, Moria attacked Kaido while Oden was here. While Oden was dancing naked in the streets, Moria was fighting Kaido in what seems to be an equal clash. Was it really equal? I don't think so, but it looked pretty equal according to the anime, right? So, yeah, like, did Moria try to work together with Oden and then Oden turned him down? Did Moria ever know about Oden? There's just so many things I'm curious about, brother. But yeah, Moria stocks are at an all-time high, and I just cannot wait to see him again in the current story. Because, mind you, do not forget, back in chapter 1089, I think that was the chapter, when we learned that Moria escaped Hachinosu with Perona, Oda did not show him. Oda did not show us what Moria currently looks like. You might be saying, Sai, that's a small detail. I get it. I can agree with that even. But here's the thing. Moria is coming off of the loss of his best friend to Blackbeard. His zombie army is no more. Dr. Hogback isn't here. The only person he has at his side right now is Perona. So, now that nothing's panning out his way, does he have a prison body? Did he end up locking in and realizing that he himself needs to get stronger again? I'm curious, brother. I would not be shocked. I've been talking about this for 2 years now, but I would not be shocked if when we see Moria again, he is back to prime Moria. He's not going to be fat. He's not going to have the crazy neck. No. I'm looking forward to seeing him, man. And Oda adding in the KOZUKI name drop here today is quite honestly one of the funnest things that has happened all year. I'm not even joking when I say that, man. So, Moria. Now that he is out and about, now that he's relevant again, where could we see him next? Personally, I do put him with Cross Guild. I feel like that just makes the most sense. He doesn't have a home right now. All he has is Perona. And Perona does have really good connections with Mihawk. If Perona simply goes to Mihawk and says, hey, here's Moria, we need a home, I guarantee you they'll just say yes, right? Especially knowing Crocodile, Buggy, and Mihawk, they need manpower, they need military might. GECKO Moria adds just that. And, it goes back to an older theory as well about how Cross Guild is collecting dead Marine bodies. Well, dude, you put GECKO Moria in that morgue, in that cemetery, dead Marine zombies, easy. And let me tell you, if you're a Marine and you see, your good friend Billy Bob rise from the dead, you probably don't want to fight that guy, right? You'd probably be very hesitant to shoot your old friend, your old dead Nakama. So yes, I think Moria would be a great addition to Cross Guild for that reason. And not to mention, now that he's KOZUKI Moria, there's a good chance he can read the Poneglyphs, because that's one of the main things that the KOZUKI have passed down from generation to generation. Poneglyph reading and Poneglyph inscriptions. Moria, if he is a true blood KOZUKI or a true adopted son of the KOZUKIs, he should be able to do that. And I think that is huge, right? Buggy wants to go after the One Piece, and that's fine and dandy. We could see Buggy getting multiple Poneglyphs. Whole Cake Island doesn't have Big Mom. You go there with Mihawk, it's done. Nobody's stopping Mihawk or Crocodile. You go to Zoe, I said it, but Buggy could flex that he knew Gold Roger. He was there at Zoe as well. As a kid, they could just give it to him. And then go to Wano. Buggy can do the exact same thing, get the Poneglyphs, or they could fight the gauntlet, right? But at the end of the day, if they cannot read the Poneglyphs, it doesn't really matter. But now that Moria is a KOZUKI member, he is their key. As silly as that sounds, he is their key. So we talked about how easy it would be for Buggy to run the gauntlet and get 3 of the Poneglyphs, but let's just be real too. Now that we have Moria as a potential cross-guild candidate, dude, Moria literally could walk into Zoe, show a KOZUKI tattoo, and then they would bend over and give him the Poneglyph, right? Zoe is indebted. They are allies with the KOZUKI. And then, same thing, go to Wano. Moria could go over there and say, hey, I'm KOZUKI. And they're like, oh, cool. Here's our Poneglyph, man. Like, dude, Moria is that guy. He is their VIP card. And this is going to get even more blasphemous. But Moria, he lived in Wano. Moria can read the Poneglyphs potentially. Could Moria actually go after Pluton? Because it's there. If Moria goes there, he could get Pluton. I don't know, man. I mean, hell, Moria did have Thriller Bark, and that was like an island ship. If Moria comes back with another massive, crazy ship, would we even be shocked? I don't know. I mean, I think Blackbeard's gonna get Pluton, but Moria is a really fun second option, I will admit. So, let me see here. Is that everything I wanted to get off my chest about Moria? Oh no, one more thing. Big Mom and Kaido. If Moria were to come here to Wano, I do wonder if he would look for corpses. Like, perhaps he stops by, and he's like, hey, I heard Kaido and Big Mom died. Can can I go looking for those dead bodies? Like, dude, if I was Moria, I'd be like, yo, like, give me all of them, right? Kaido and Big Mom, I want to bring them back as zombies. You know, one way or another, we will get Big Mom and Kaido, whether they're alive or whether they come back as Moria zombies. Brother, the world is the limit. And, you know, outside of those two monsters, if Moria is still a scummy guy, right? Because we don't know if he truly does love Wano or not yet. But if he's pretty indifferent about it, we could see Moria come back and take Ashura, Doji, and Izo's corpses and use them as zombie fodder. But like I said, I guess that'll be the true test to see whether or not Moria cares about Wano. Because I doubt he would steal his family's retainers like that. So yeah, for me at least, that one is still up in the air. The last thing about Moria, and then we'll move on. I promise, guys, I promise. Let me get this in. But will we see Moria in the cover page story? I don't think so. I don't think we'll see Moria in the cover page story. As fun as that would be, I don't think we'll get it. You know, I still think we will move on to greener pastures. Maybe we get the rest of the Beast Pirates like Jack the Drowned, as well as Black Maria and Sasaki. We could get the Blackbeard Pirates as well, you know, depending on the time frame. Maybe Blackbeard comes here for Pluton, like I said earlier. There's still a lot of other avenues we could go down. But man, Moria showing up, that would just be icing on the cake. What's really fun about all this is that Oda has probably been planning Moria to be such a pivotal character for so long now. Because outside of the Wano stuff, right? That's kind of been in our faces this whole time with him having Ryuma's corpse and Shisui. And then not to mention, we have the whole thing where you just flip his name upside down and it's literally KOZUKI. So you could say that from his inception, he was always a KOZUKI member. Like, that's not just something you pull out of thin air. That has to be planned to some extent. But Moria's thoughts do not stop with this chapter. We still have to explain why Moria has so many Rocks pirate members within his crew. He has Captain John, Gil Bastar, the Vega pirate, and he even has Ganzui the smuggler, if not more that we just haven't seen too. Right there, he has 4 named people out of the Rocks crew. Brother, how? You know, we're gonna get more Moria stuff. It's just a matter of when. And then plus, you know, Moria, he probably does know what those giant creatures in the Florian Triangle actually are too. Right? Moria's been there for years. I highly doubt he does not know what was in his backyard. Moria 2025, I didn't think this would happen, but here we have it. One of the funnest reveals in One Piece, in my opinion. Alright, so there's one last theory we have to tackle before we move on to the actual chapter, but it has to do with my #1 girl in the series. But a lot of people have been tagging me in posts saying that Perona could be a member of some Wano family. And I say some Wano family because this is still up in the air, right? Perona could come from the Shimotsuki, she could come from the Kurozumi, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of Wano families we could bring up, right? But people are saying that she looks very similar to Toko, right? Toko also has pink hair, just like Perona. And not to mention, but Toko, just like Perona, has the giant bug-eye pupils. And they're like, hey, like maybe they're related. Maybe they're cousins or long-lost niece and nephew or, you know, something of the sort. And I don't think that's a bad theory. You know, considering the fact that Perona also comes from the West Blue, the same blue that Moria's from, and he's a KOZUKI, I don't think that's bad. And one thing that I found really odd about the Toko and Perona connection is that Toko is an orphan. Both of Toko's parents died. We do not know Toko's last name. She, of course, got adopted by Yasui, so she's essentially Toko Shimotsuki, but that's only by name and not blood. And what's funny about Perona is that Perona was also an orphan, and then she was adopted by Moria. So we have this like weird parallel with whatever family Toko and Perona are from, just constantly churning out orphans. So yeah, I like the theory a lot. I really do. And another reason why I like this, outside of me just liking Perona in general, is because of Zoro. Zoro and Perona, they've kind of been like this, I'm not gonna lie. right? They have this weird, like, brother-sister relationship going on, especially back during Mihawk's training arc, right? Perona was always helping out Zoro and vice versa, and she was always messing with him. And if we get the reveal that Perona does come from a Wano family, I just think that would be really well-rounded, because Zoro also comes from a Wano family, right? People forget, right? People have the name Roanoa Zoro and they just run with it, but Zoro does have Shimotsuki blood running through his veins. So yeah, for a lot of reasons, I do like the Perona theories too, outside of just me liking her, like I said. So now that we're done with the first page of the chapter, essentially, it's time to move on to the actual chapter. We start off on the Oro Jackson. We're still in the flashback, and we see that Roger is a little bit sullen. All right, Roger's a little bit down in the dumps, and that is when Gaban pulls up to Rayleigh and he says, "Hey, Rayleigh, after you and Roger talked in the cabin, he's been in a bad mood. What did you guys talk about?" We then get another flashback, a flashback within a flashback, and we see that they talked about Shaki leaving the Kuja Pirates. Roger was wondering why she looked so sick last time they saw her, and Rayleigh pulls out the letter that Shaki gave him. And the letter, according to TCB, says, "Come and make me yours." It is a love letter through and through. Roger's like, "Wait, you're not gonna take her up?" Rayleigh says, "I would love to. I'm not interested, but I just don't want to be tied down right now." Roger screams out, "Well, I do. I want to be tied down." And then that is when we come back to Roger in the present time, and he says, "Well, even then, I'm still not giving up. We're pirates after all. If we want something, we're simply going to plunder and take it," referring to Shaki, which is hilarious, right? So, moving on with the chapter, we are now 40 years in the past, and Garling is in the Room of Authority. He says, "Hey, Gorosei, I know we just held the last competition recently, but my proposal is that in 2 years, we hold the next one at God Valley." They ask him why, and he says it is because he found something quite remarkable over there. Something that Emu would absolutely love. And not just that, but of course there are resources there and materials that could be very beneficial to the world government. So it's a win-win-win across the board. So now, what did Garling find? It's funny. For the past couple of days, I've been going really back and forth about this one. At first, I thought he maybe found a devil fruit, maybe he found some void century technology, maybe he even found Uranus over there, right? The Lelucia weapon, and that is why God Valley is no longer on the map, because it got Lelucia'd. And then, I most recently thought about it maybe being the woman at the end of the chapter. Maybe Emu really loves women, and when we see the woman at the end, that is just Emu's type. And I'm gonna be quite honest, guys. I'm gonna be honest, sports fans, but I have no clue. I have not put my chips down on any theory yet. I think right now, the only thing I am certain about is that whatever Garling found at God Valley, whatever Emu would absolutely love, it is something that Garling cannot simply put in a bag and bring back home. Because hell, if you could get into Emu's good graces by giving them this thing, then why didn't Garling just bring it back originally, right? If it is the woman at the end of the chapter, why not just put a collar on her and drag her ass back? If it's a poneglyph, why not put it on a ship and bring it back? If it's resources or devil fruit, why not just pluck it off a tree or, mine it out of the ground and bring it back? Whatever Garling found, it's gotta be something that is either massive or immovable. I feel like it could just be something really out of left field, kind of like how Shaki is revealed to be the treasure of Hachinosu. It could be something like that, right? It could just be something that none of us really expect. Oh yeah, real quick, but something I do want to put a slight emphasis on is the fact that during this time period, Garling is introduced to us as a simple Holy Knight. He is not the supreme commander of them during this time period. So I wouldn't be shocked if by the time we get to God Valley and we see more of the Holy Knights, if there was a previous supreme commander at that time. Like maybe they were the ones who fought alongside Garp, Roger, and Rox, and that would explain why Garling probably was the one who scarred Whitebeard and why he fought Whitebeard in the first place. it's because Garling was a, quote, regular holy knight at the time. What's funny too is that by the end of this chapter, we see a red-haired woman giving birth to twins. And, you know, when you line it up with Garling here 40 years ago saying he just got back from God Valley, it's like, yo, Garling really put in work into that mission, huh? You know? So at first, I was really iffy if those are Garling's kids or not. But, you know, I am leaning towards the fact that they are, right? People have brought up that Shanks and Shamrock, they look pretty much identical to Garling, and I see it, right? I definitely see it. A lot of people have mentioned that already. I guess now, like, one thing I am kind of curious about, I know we're skipping to the end of the chapter, but I am wondering why Garling's maiden is at God Valley. Like, is she really just a random civilian? Is she the princess of God Valley, and that's why Garling just let her go? Does Garling actually love her? Because let's be real, right? We've seen a lot of nasty, nasty celestial dragons in the past, and when they want a woman, you know, they just bring her back. So Garling not doing that, it's like, okay, she's probably really special. She could even be a celestial dragon that decided to live in the lower world, right? We've seen that with Saint Homing, right? Saint Homing, he wanted to live among the common folk. So maybe this girl is the same way, and that's why Garling isn't putting a leash on her. But yeah, that is yet to be seen. There is also a chance that he's just a lover boy, right? We don't know how he feels about that lady right now, but we do know that he is absent, right? He's pulling a little bit of a Yasop, a little bit of a dragon. He's absent as of right now, but, you know, duty calls, man, duty calls. One thing I am also curious about is whether or not if this woman at the end of the chapter knows what Garling is planning. Does the red-haired woman know that the rabbit hunting tournament will take place there? And also, will she survive the tournament? Is she currently still alive today? There's just so many questions around this woman, and I just do not know where to start, right? We could ask about her name, her lineage, you know, what does she know? What does she not know? How does Garling feel about her? There's a lot there, right? So I'm gonna leave that one pretty open-ended until we get the next chapter, we learn more about her. But yeah, I did think the Shanks and Shamrock reveal was pretty cool. Another thing I found kind of interesting too, and people have been bringing this up, but they're like, wait a minute, Shanks, that's his real name, right? Roger found Shanks in the chest at God Valley, and we all assumed that Roger gave him the name Shanks, but that's not the case. It looks like Shanks might have come with a name tag attached to his clothing, because that right there would be the only possible way that Roger would know that Shanks is his actual name, and that's why I called him that. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. So now, moving on with the chapter, we go over to Hachinosu, and we see Roxy Syvduck smiling from cheek to cheek. It's kind of a scary smile, I will admit, right? He's got like the smile going on, and he's not even saying anything too. He's just sitting by himself, just looking at a wall. Shaki pops up and says, hey, what are you smiling about? That smile isn't for me, is it? That is when Big Mom pops up and she says, wow, the intuition of a woman is a scary thing after all. And it looks like pretty much all the women know that Roxy Syvduck has fell in love outside of the bar. And not just that, but Stussy even has a theory that he has just been blessed with a child, which is pretty cool. It's fun seeing the Rocks Pirates in a non-hostile environment, right? Whenever we saw the Rocks Pirates before this chapter, they were aura farming, they were fighting, but here it really does seem like a big old family. Also, it's a little bit unfortunate that we didn't get to see who Rocks fell in love with this chapter. I do wonder if Oda will canonize her concept drawing from Databook Green, or if he'll just give her a brand new design outright. Which I am leaning towards the latter at this point, given how old this data book really is, and how old Blackbeard's mom was actually shown as. Shortly after that conversation about Rox's kid, Roger just pops right in, and he starts butting heads with Rox, which is pretty awesome. You can definitely tell that this is not their first time meeting or potentially fighting. Rox is like, hey, Roger, how many times do I have to tell you this is my island? And then Roger's like, wait, didn't you hear? You can't fight here, ha ha ha. So I just love how everybody respects Shaki's rules, because we do get the narrator box by the end of this portion, And it says that Shakuyaku's rules ensured that anyone coming to the island to visit her establishment would be granted safe passage. Even the fiercest of pirates would keep the peace if they crossed paths. But, of course, when they go back out to sea, all bets were off. Dude, Shaki has that much sway. Shaki is so powerful. Her influence is so grand that she could stop Rox and Roger from fighting. The amount of motion Shaki has, crazy, crazy. So we see that Shaki does get really bummed out after Roger shows up, and that is because Rayleigh is nowhere to be found. So Shaki says, damn it, I don't want to join your crew, Roger, I guess I'll pass. And then she ends up fainting as well because Rayleigh just is not present. And it's kind of funny because as much as Roger wants Shaki for himself, he does want her to be happy at the end of the day. So even though Shaki is passing over Roger, Roger's like, oh, man, Rayleigh, why didn't you come? Now look what you did. So I thought that was kind of wholesome. It's like a love triangle, but Roger knows that he doesn't stand a chance, so he just wants them to be happy. And then we see freaking Rayleigh on the Roger ship singing Bing Sake, just chilling with the boys. So yeah, it's pretty good stuff, man. Also, we do get cleared up on the whole Gloriosa situation while we're here, which I think is awesome. Because last chapter, or was it the chapter before? It might have been the chapter before. But I was wondering why Gloriosa didn't just join the Roger crew. Like, she's such a heavy hitter that I was shocked that she willingly left the Kuja Pirates and joined Rox, and not Roger. Turns out that this isn't her first time trying to join Roger's crew. Roger has just been constantly turning her down. And it's like, damn, dude, that kind of sucks, man. I mean, I get it, right? You know, Gloriosa, she's fawning over Roger. She's constantly jumping on Roger. So yeah, I do get Roger's perspective on why he wouldn't want her to join. And yeah, overall, I'm just happy that Oda cleared that up because I did think that was a really odd plot point. And it could tie back to Boa Hancock in some way. Like, because Boa Hancock wants to go after Luffy. But now I'm just wondering, but if Boa asked Luffy if she could join his crew, would Luffy say yes or no? Because I do feel like Luffy would say yes. Right? Like, Luffy's not like Roger in this sense where he's like, oh, you know, I think this is love and she's constantly over me. I don't like this. Like, Luffy kind of accepts all of Hancock's gestures with a smile on his face. He's not bothered whenever Hancock dotes on him. So I wouldn't be shocked if Luffy does say yes, but that's a weird one. And that is a little bit of a strange one. So we go down and we now have the Rox and Harald confrontation. And it's tough, brother. You know, we saw this coming since last week. The Gorosei offered King Harald a spot within the WG if he simply killed his friend Rox. And Harald, you know, he was between a rock and a hard place, quite literally. I made that joke last week. I'll make it one more time, damn it. He is quite literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. Rox is his friend, but also he's a villain. And if he wants to guarantee Elbaf's successful future, then he has to join the world government. That right there is the best way to destroy the narrative around the giants and how they're all bloodthirsty savages. If Harald is able to get Elbaf within the world government, that narrative would be shattered. You know, the world government could say, hey, we love the giants, you guys should too. And then that influence does matter. That is what Harald is trying to do here. You know, so Harald even says, I was torn. Is this really something worth killing a friend over? And what's funny is that he never says that it is. You know, King Harald, it seems like he's still debating it, right? Like, is this really worth it? And he's thinking back to all the people who talk about Elbaf's narrative and how evil the giants were in the past. And he's like, this really is the only way. And Rox, you know, Rox is saddened by this as well. We even see Rox like grab his head. He's like, stop it. You're just a cowardly rat, man. Just join me, dude. The Celestial Dragons are ass. It's a crazy back and forth. And, you know, people have been dogpiling on Harald, saying that he's a rat, he's a traitor, he's scum. But I just see a guy trying to do what he thinks is best for his country. And while I do get hurt by this, right? Like, I hate to see two friends fight like this. I understand both perspectives. while Rox is trying to destroy the world and take over it, there's no guarantee that he'll win, right? Even King Harald says, I can't throw away my people's lives by following a villain like you into a losing battle. And then, on the other hand, Rox's argument is that even if the Giants were to join the WG, that they'd just be used for violence anyways. Thus, the narrative that King Harald is trying to shatter would just get perpetuated even more. In hindsight, we know that Rox is correct here, considering how Emu has talked about the Giants and how they're currently being Domi reversied on their own island. But I can't blame King Harald for wanting to believe in a brighter future. King Harald is just doing what he thinks is correct, and there's a good chance he has no clue about Emu's existence and what Emu has planned for the Giants. And then as far as the fight goes, I thought it was pretty cool. You know, we have a couple of clashes here or there. It was more all just about the dialogue they were talking, more so than the fighting. You know, while it looked like they were trying to kill each other while both of them were bleeding, the battle was never going to be settled like this, right? Even the narrator says that this ended in a draw, right? They both just left that fight pretty heartbroken. The narrator says that this is the end of their bizarre friendship, and they would not meet again for some time, not until the day of a certain incident. So, what is the narrator talking about? What is Oda talking about here? Because when I think about a certain incident and that day, I immediately go to King Harald's death. It's either the day King Harald died or the final day at God Valley. Personally, I could see King Harald showing up to God Valley, right? Maybe he shows up to help Rox or maybe to put Rox down. Yeah, I think King Harald does fit in there. I mean, hell, ever since we first heard about God Valley, Oda added in the God Knights, and then he added in Shaki. If he added in King Harald too, I think that would be pretty par for the course. And now for the other day they could be referring to, what if they are talking about the day King Harald dies? I don't know. I've heard people talking about that theory as well, but I'm not too sure where to go with that, right? Because to our knowledge, Rox should be dead, right? Nobody's ever really confirmed his death per se, but I'd like to imagine that he's long and gone by now. But what if he is still alive? Or what if he does live within Blackbeard and that's how King Harald sees him again at that day? I think there are a couple of routes we could go with this. And if Rox is the one who came to Elbaf to kill King Harald a long time ago, I do, in a weird way, think that could work. Mainly because the world government, even as of right now, in the current timeline, they seem quite favorable to King Harald. Right? They talked about Harald's blunder as if he was working for them and then he just failed one day. And then not to mention, you know, Sommers talked about Shamrock visiting King Harald's grave. It seems like they had a really good relationship until that final moment. So whoever killed King Harald might not be a part of the world government. So Rox does kind of fit that. And then plus, whoever attacked King Harald and the castle 14 years ago, they also were the ones who went down to the treasure room to get Elbaf's legendary devil fruit. Who could it be? Right, I still think that was the Sun God Nika fruit. I still think the world government makes sense there. But Rox is the only other character who mentioned the Elbaf devil fruit, so it could have been him too. I don't know. You know, that is a theory that I'm just not too sure where to go with, but I want to keep the door open. I think that idea that Rox was there the day King Harald died isn't that awful. It's not awful at all. So now that Rox and Harald's relationship has crumbled, Loki is very sad. Right, he's sitting off the coast of Elbaf waiting for Rox to arrive one day, but Ida says, hey, he's not coming back. Loki says, hey, shut up, you old bag. And then Ida ignores that and says, hey, do you want some juice? And Loki says, yeah, I want juice, which is pretty funny. It does remind me of young Luffy and how when he was at the bar with Shanks, the one thing Luffy would like is juice. So yeah, another Loki-Luffy parallel right there. And then now we go over to the final page of the chapter, with Garling's kids, Shanks and Shamrock, and we kind of already talked about that earlier, so I'm not gonna beat the bush on that one. But yeah, I am just wondering still why Garling left his kids there. Maybe he'll come back and pick them up. Maybe Garling gets word that his kids are born and he just runs over and, you know, picks up a young Shanks and Shamrock and throws him up in the air. But I don't know, right? Like, how does Garling feel about these kids? Because one way or another, Shanks does end up in a treasure chest at God Valley. Why would he let his son just be there? Why was his son in a treasure chest? There's still a lot of things we have to answer surrounding this. But yes, with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. I really freaking appreciate it. Thank you for joining me on the Moria Talkathon. Right, I just had to, man. Moria is so cool. But anyways, a couple of things I do want to shout out before we get out of here. But I do have a gaming channel over here on YouTube at Syvduck, Syvduck. So make sure to check that out if you have the time or if you're interested in that in general. I also have an anime reaction channel called Somnus Reacts here on YouTube too. I mainly react to One Piece, but of course, if another anime catches my eye, I will pick that up ASAP. Until then, though, you guys take care. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.